tomorrow night is the Hoosiers at Huber's returning for its annual gathering. Wednesday, May 29th, again tomorrow night. Join Hoosiers Connect for an evening at Huber's Orchard Winery and Vineyards. This event mainly for Southern Indiana and Louisville Hoosier communities, so they can gather in there. Will feature head football coach Kurt Signetti, head men's basketball coach Woodson, and players from Indiana men's, women's basketball program and the football program. There's an autograph session afterwards. Proceeds from this year's event will benefit Indiana's NIL program. The cost is only $50 per person, as it has been for years. That hasn't changed. The doors open at 5:30. The program starts at 6. You can register online at inforindiana.com. There you go, inforindiana.com. We'll be down there, of course, covering that, but that it's usually just packed. Todd, you've never been able to make it down there, but the fried chicken dinner at Huber's is awesome, and I always look forward to that as much as anything. But
I know everybody always raves about it.
Yeah, it's a fun event, and it's full. I mean, this thing packs it in. It started out as just a thing to get Bob Knight down there. It was Bob Knight doing, what he used to do, to go give those talks where he made everybody laugh, and he would cuss here and there.
Some people cry, and yeah.
Oh yeah, but I remember I've told this story. I was still in school, but working in media, and I had it set up for. I was at WLKY in Louisville, and I had it set up for us to get an interview with Knight. It was approved, and but the local alumni association guy was, swelling his chest up. He didn't know anything about what was going on, and wouldn't allow us in. And so we got turned away, but that got made up later. But still, it was fun. But it's a great event, and it's a great time for the fans down there they get to see and hear from multiple coaches, players, which has not happened before. And this is fueling the NIL because we've had this recent agreement that is an ongoing thing with the NCAA, that they're going to shell out $2.8 billion back to 2016, man. So you're not in that. You don't get covered by that, unfortunately.
I do not.
You should have filed suit, but I think the statute of limitations can only stretch back to so far. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't think that they're too worried about people from the 90s in that NIL deal, but the whole scenario is just bizarre and weird. It doesn't make any sense, but it's the changing world of college athletics, and the whole amateurism thing that was always tied to the NCAA and college and all of that. I think that's the part of it that we all have to understand is gone, because these guys are no longer amateurs. Like, they are.
Yeah, paid. On paper they're not, but I still think that they're amateurs. I know
because in our minds, that's what it's been for 48 years in our brains. And so we're just not used to dealing with it yet. But I don't see it ever going back, and we're just going to have to deal with the fact it's different. They are paid employees.
And I want to look at it as an amateur, but you have to stop and think, these guys they're free agents, and they make deals to go to different teams. The one thing I cannot stand, and I hope that they're able to get a grip and change, is the ability for these players to just go from team to team to team. And I hope that they can also somehow work in a way to where there's like a multi-year agreement to where you are bound for multiple years if you sign an agreement someplace.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I don't know if I know what the answers are. I know my quick thought on it, and there's probably more layers than it needs to be talked more about. But I mean, the easy thing in my mind to do would be, you can transfer one time, no questions asked, leave, go to a different school, do whatever you want one time, and that's it. And then there would be such a hard line, and number of hoops you would have to go through in order to transfer a second time, that they'd almost have to make it not worth it for somebody to sit out like 2 extra years or something else. But I understand everyone should have the ability to leave and go do something different if the situation isn't what they thought it was going to be. You make a decision about where you're going to school when you're 18 years old, and I can understand like it might not work out the way you thought. But transferring one time, I think would be fair and make some sense and be okay for a lot of people. But after that, they should not be allowed to transfer again, in my opinion. One time and that's it.
Yeah, and it used to be that way. It used to be,
Well, no, it didn't. It used to be you still had to sit out a year, even
right.
If you
Well, that's what I'm saying. It used to just not. It wasn't either. It wasn't worth it, or it was too hard. But
right.
And I mean, they had to fight for, just 2 years ago, those guys that were fighting for a transfer, that they were being ruled against them because they had a transfer, but they didn't play someplace and all that. And then, they kept getting sued and losing. And I'm like, good God, they've never won a suit, I don't think. Right. And they just were never challenged before. But now there's also a suit going on. But this is where I find the NCAA is just complete idiocy. The 2 guys from the Ivy League, who the Ivy League did not play during the COVID year. They shut sports down.
Right.
Everyone else still played. But all of those guys were also granted a 5th year that played. But the guys that didn't even get to play in the Ivy League were not granted a 5th year. And so they're fighting, and they're suing to get their 5th year, and the NCAA is fighting it. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? This is why you lose every freaking time you're in court.
Well, and I have said this, and I don't know what argument would have to happen to get me to change my opinion on this, but the IHSAA and the NCAA are 2 organizations that do not have a governing body. They don't answer to anyone. No one tells them what to do. They make their own rules. And when you break those rules in the past, you've been ineligible to play. And that's kind of been what's allowed them to stay in charge. And now people are questioning that, and not just questioning it, but challenging it and winning those challenges. And now the NCAA is getting ready to be, and it's not going to be this year, and maybe they'll make adjustments so that it never ends up happening, but they're on the border of putting themselves in a position where they're just going to have to go away, because they're not going to govern over anybody. And these teams will just make up a super league or whatever they'll end up doing. And the NCAA and the IHSAA, from an Indiana standpoint, a high school basketball or high school sports, the IHSAA is just as bad. Like, they're actually worse. Like, they affect, kids' eligibility and transfer rules and all that stuff. And they don't have anybody, there's no common sense factor helping out the IHSAA. I've always said I've never had a good experience with the IHSAA. It's a very poorly run organization that makes their own rules and doesn't have anybody that governs them. And that just is a bad situation all the way around. And they've made some really, really bad decisions that have really hurt. I can speak directly with my family. They have hurt my kids' abilities to play in high school, and it was completely unwarranted and unnecessary and ridiculous. The IHSAA is a joke. Like, there's nothing about it that I don't think is corrupt and wrong.
Oh, we could get Kyle Nedenrip on, and he's not one that rips people, but he could list a long list of decisions that were made.
Yep.
And I wish I could remember the one kid who had one of the most legitimate reasons for moving schools. It was his mother work and all this, and they just refused it. And it's just like, what is wrong with you?
Yep. It's a joke. It's an embarrassing joke, and they should be embarrassed, and they're not.
Yeah. They and many people thought that about the NCAA for a long time.
Totally. They're very parallel organizations.
And then they kept losing. And now their basic job now is to just put on championships, the basketball championships and baseball and all of that, everything except for football, which they do not put on the football championships.
Yeah, well, you look at schools like the Montverde and La Lumiere and all of these different prep schools. If the IHSAA and other state organizations, high school organizations, keep running the way that they have for the last 50 years, then all the top talent are going to leave and go play on all of these prep school teams, and I don't blame them because some of the decisions that are made by the IHSAA are just, I mean, they're silly. They don't make any sense, and they're not right. And the NCAA is dealing with some of the fallback right now on their bad decisions they've made, and I don't know how they recover from it. Honestly, like it's going to be difficult.
In the way too early top 25 from ESPN and from others, but just taking this one out, Indiana ranked number 16 in the preseason, which for Hoosier fans, that should bring a lot of excitement because they have not seen a top 25 ranking in a couple of years. So to be preseason, to be thought of that highly, which they should be, they've reloaded with a lot of talent. Purdue at the number 13 slot. We'll talk about them in a moment. But Indiana, they've reloaded with a lot of talent, Todd.
Yeah, they have. I mean, but you know what that does, Jim, and I'm glad it is what it is. I usually totally disregard the rankings at this point because you just said the too early ranking.
Guess.
Like it's a joke. I get all of that. But I'll tell you what I do like about it for Indiana in this point is I think it puts a little pressure on them. And sometimes I think that pressure can be good. And I hope in this case it's one of those scenarios. But I mean, the expectation level is up there. So basically what I read into those rankings are people who study all the teams across the country and the rosters for all the teams across the country, because that's really all you can base it off of right now, are the rosters that these teams have to deal with. Indiana as viewed by a large group of people that they are in that top 20 rosters of talent across the country. And so now they've got to go out on the floor and back that up. And I like that side of it. I would rather have the expectations really high and have to live up to that than have no expectations and have to be some surprise good team.
Yeah, they list a projected starting lineup of Miles Rice, Kanan Carlisle, Mackenzie Mbako, Malik Renew, and Omar Ballo. That's not a bad starting lineup because if you look at what they averaged last year, Miles Rice averaged nearly 15 points per game. Kanan Carlisle, 11.5 points per game. Stopping right there at a moment. Last year, and not to put anything on him, but you had Gabe Cupps who averaged 1 point a game. Right. You were getting nothing there. So automatically you're getting 15 points a game at a position you weren't getting anything from last year. And you have, say, Trey Galloway on the bench behind that or something like that. But this is a big, big difference for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they're definitely, I'll say, much deeper and bigger expectations for what they're looking for at the guard position. But I'll tell you, I hope that roster I hope that lineup doesn't end up being what that is. And the reason I say that is because I want somebody to surprise us. Like, let's have somebody come in here and surprise us and play well. And whether that ends up being someone who's already been there and maybe injured for a couple of years, or whether that's somebody that just improves that much over the summer. I hope that we get surprised.
Who could that be, though? I mean, that Trey Galloway is the most likely candidate for that because, for one thing, Mike Woodson has shown a penchant for being loyal to his starters.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree with you. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. I hope somebody makes improvements and player develops at some point to the level this summer where that lineup does get changed and it is different because somebody stepped up. And I mean, Ja'Kai Newton is a guy that
I was just going to say, Ja'Kai Newton.
I would love for him to surprise us all and and be really good.
Yeah, Ja'Kai Newton is one that we definitely, and you've got the freshman coming in. So there are guys that we've talked about a little bit, but we've not seen Ja'Kai Newton. We don't know what he can do, and he could be the shocker. He could be an X factor.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I hope so. Like, I hope somebody is way better than what we are even anticipating them to be.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and thank you for enjoying our content and videos. And make sure you hit that subscribe and notifications toggle so you don't miss out on anything, whether it's Indiana Hoosiers, the Boilers, the Colts, the Pacers, Indiana high school action, whatever is happening in sports. We're trying to bring it all to you, and make sure you don't miss out on a thing. Again, hit the subscribe button for us. Helps us out a ton. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much.